Here's some Handel for the tenor viol. This is from a collection of intermediate solos for the tenor, selected and edited by Alison Crum and published by Corda Music. The Handel is the last piece in the book. It's a really beautiful, slow movement. I would advise having the bass line to hand while we're learning this, because it's going to be very informative about things like speed and for all sorts of harmonic interest that's going to help us shape our melodic line. So it's a walking bass, a continuous quaver moving part. It needs to not sound hurried, but it needs to not plod really slowly. So that should help us pick our speed for the top line. I'll just play you the opening phrase of the tenor part. It's just beautiful, isn't it? Kind of simple melodically, but actually because of the key, really slightly awkward and fingering wise, and there's a lot of leaps, so a lot of things to think about with the bow. So the very first note then, what are we going to do with this? It's a long note, dotted crotchet at this speed. I think it needs to bloom as it goes through, so what am I doing? I'm gradually adding more weight, more pressure onto the hair with the middle finger of the bow. I'm gradually moving nearer the bridge as I play. What I think I'm not doing is speeding up the bow to get the crescendo, so I think that it's not coming from the speed, but it's coming from just gradually adding the pressure and moving nearer the bridge. Let's give that a go. And the thing is, if you grow that note and then you stay at the height of that dynamic for the B flat is quite likely to crack. So you've got to arrange it so that you've just come away from the end of the D before you try that top note. Just experiment, spend some time working out how far can you grow that first note before it cracks. So what's your limit? How close to the bridge do you need to be before that sound gives way? And just before it is the most powerful sound that you've got. Shall we play it together from the top? And let's think about some fingering in a second. So we'll go 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. And we'll just stop there. And fourth finger trill, sorry, but I don't think there's a better way around that. You've just got to be there, haven't you? Make sure you play plenty of upper notes. And I think I would play the G after it also with a 4. But it could be an open string, couldn't it? I would bow this out. I know it feels a little bit backwards in here, but it fits this really very nicely. If you can reach it, I think it's nice to stretch the B flat to the G in bar 2. If you can't reach it, go for the top string. But if you can't reach it, have a think about why you can't reach it. Is it because your tenor is genuinely enormous and your fingers are genuinely really small? Or is it because actually your thumb is kind of halfway up the peg box and so your 4 doesn't stand a chance? Just check. If you were playing in first position, could you put a 4 on the G and reach back for the B flat? And is it actually because you've started back here? Is that the reason why you can't reach? And in which case, can you sort your thumb out earlier in bar 2? So that resound the B flat before the trill comes away. In the third bar, the D that's tied over here, if you can check the bass parts, when you start that D, the bass is playing a D against it, but as it's tied over, the bass moves onto an E flat, and that's going to create a really intense dissonance. And if you've tailed your D away, just as it gets to the most interesting harmony, you're going to miss it because your D has disappeared. So I would use that as a suggestion that this note, rather than disappearing away, actually needs to grow through and into the next C. So, from the top then, here we go, right at the tip of the bow, think about where you're going to start in terms of distance from the bridge so that you can grow that first note with a really convincing shape. 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. Shall we go on? So the last quaver of 3 I think needs to be in first position with a second finger. So you've got a 4 for the G, then come back, and you can stay in half position, can't you, for all of that. When there's a big string cross here, it's such a nice open string at the bottom. Make sure it speaks, so you hear that 7th interval, but you cannot join those two notes together in a legato bow because you've got the A string in the middle. So you need to play it as though you didn't want them joined anyway. So make use of the resonance of the F string, but don't try to go for a really smooth line because it's not physically possible. So you have to phrase it in a way that makes it really convincing that there's a string to cross in the middle, and that's fine. That's absolutely okay. But here, why don't we make the most of that line? How much bow do you need for a demi-semi-quaver? Yeah? Too much like hard work. You might tuck that in actually, as you wish really, at the end. The top B flat in bar 4. Again, when you risk just growing that on a bit, it is risky because the more you grow it, the closer you get to the point where that note's going to crack. But if you don't grow it, it's deadly dull. It just doesn't do anything, does it? This is the last quaver of bar 3. Let's try it together. So 3 and 4 and 1. Just like the beginning, isn't it? There's plenty of time in the middle of bar 5. After that, If you were singing this, or if you're playing it on a flute or a recorder, you'd have to breathe there. You're allowed to breathe as a string player too. And if you breathe as a recorder player, you cannot make a note at the same time. So equally, it's fine for the breath to actually not involve any note at all. And if you don't take your left hand off, the sound won't die kind of dead. It'll just tail away while you find yourself on the top string with plenty of time. You need to be in first position here, don't you, to get the trill again. Again, reach this one if you can. Trill. I think that comes away at the end of that line, so that this is something new and dramatic. Shall we go from the last quaver of bar 5? 3 and 4. Such dramatic harmony, isn't it, in 8. Here. I think just plenty of bow. And I would definitely finger that so that you can get the pair of each slur on the same string. So the A string to a C sharp is easy, but then definitely 1/4. And hold the 4 down across the string. When you get to the B flat, don't let that come off. Take time with the bow after you've played that. There's time to find this. And this. And if that's a 4, it's not as far to go as to the top string. There's quite a few places in here where dotted rhythms come out backwards and you end up with little tiny demi-semiquavers on forward bows. I think it's preferable to tucking lots of stuff and kind of smudging the lines. I quite like, there's an elegance to a real clarity in the dots, but you have to watch that the forward bow doesn't come out as a really strong thing. Shall we go from the last quaver of bar 7? This is a really... How much bow do you need for a quaver? It turns out you need the whole jolly lot, I think. Really dramatic statement, this. End of 7. 3 and 4. So the end of 7 into 8 was very big and very dramatic. But I think the end of 9, this has a really mournful air to it. So perhaps we could just bring the dynamic back down there and not work quite so hard. This is the middle of bar 9. Should be a trill there, it's not marked in my copy here. on a 4, couldn't you, at the start of 11? To put them on adjacent strings. But then you need to swap fingers for the trill. So you could play an open string in 11 instead. That's slightly down to personal taste. I quite like this, the 4. Then change finger. Definitely play the A on the F string. And hold it while you cross the string to the bottom D. I think we should go from the middle of bar 9. In fact, I think we should go from the beginning of 9. So we get the idea that this D is the end of that phrase, but it's also the beginning of that. So the way you play it, like an ending, oh, but going on. Let's just practice that. This is the beginning of bar 9. 3 and 4 and... It should do that, shouldn't it? But it doesn't. We'll look at that in a second. There's a lot to think about in here. So this is the end of bar 11. There's got to be a way of featuring the top notes with plenty of bow. And that bottom one just turns around on itself. But again, looking at the bass part, the second half of that C gets an F sharp underneath it, so don't tail it away too much. Let's have a think about this. Keep the C down, look with your left hand for as long as you possibly can. You can keep the top A for a long time as well, can't you? Again, keep the G here for the harmony of this. Now this bar is genuinely difficult. Bar 13 is the best fingering in bar 13 would be to grow another finger. But that's going to take more than the 5 minutes we might take to think about the fingering, so we'll make use of the 4 that we've got. Top tip for this, I've played this several times, and when I started at the beginning of bar 13, every time I got to the middle of the bar, I ran out of fingers for the D and the F sharp in the middle. So if you find when you play something forwards that you run out of fingers for the bit you're about to play, top tip, play it backwards. Not literally backwards, but I mean start with the last bit first and think, now if I hadn't used all my fingers up in the first half of that bar, what in an ideal world would I have fingering wise at the bit that I've just arrived at? So look at the middle of 13. D, F sharp, A, C, F sharp. If you start that on a 2 at the bottom, you can finger the whole thing perfectly. Right to the end of the bar. If you start that on a 1 because you've come from somewhere else, you're absolutely scuppered. You're going to have to find sharps and things up here and tie yourself in all sorts of knots. So let's put a 2 in the middle of bar 13. Now if that's a 2 on the D, the E flat before it will have been a 3, and the C before that, look, your little finger is hanging about waiting to play, and an open D before it. So now I'm looking at the second beat of bar 13, and finding that I've got a 3 on the E flat, an open D string, a 4 on the C. My 3 is still on the E flat, it hasn't gone anywhere. And look now, here we are ready for that D major 7th chord. Does that make sense? So I worked the fingering out for that backwards based on where I was hoping to be by the time I got there, and then therefore what route I needed to take in order to get to that fingering. I'll just whiz through that again. This is bar 13 and I'm starting on the 2nd crotchet beat, the 2nd set of beamed semiquavers, and I've got a 3rd finger on the E flat at the bottom, and I'm going to leave it because it's a jolly long way to go with the bow to get across here. Open D string and a 4. My 3 is still down on the E flat. And there we are with that D chord ready to go. Let's do the end of 12, shall we? So we're in half position. I think we need to aim to be in the top half of the bow. If we try and play this stuff down here, there's all of this waving about in the breeze at the end. It makes it very difficult to control. So we're going to aim to be in the top half. The end of 12, half position. 3 and 4. Now you need to shift because this needs a trill on it. So the start of 14, you've got to have enough fingers left to put a trill on that 2nd beat. I'm just bowing all of this out. So 14 will come on a forward bow. And this top note will also come on a nice forward bow if you just bow straight through. This D, this is 15, again starts with a D against it in the bass part, but the bass part moves on to an E flat. So make sure that note grows through and doesn't come away on the tie. Now it's not possible to get these 2 notes, this is the last 2 notes of 15, it's not really possible to get them on adjacent strings. I mean, you could put it up there, it's a bit ludicrous, so just give the bottom note the best chance it can of hanging on by not taking your fingers off. And you are just going to have to slightly separate that slur. I would tuck this in. I think we're going to go from the middle of 13 because it's a good idea to practice that bit. Middle of 13. 1 and 2 and... So one of the main difficulties in this, I think, is not sounding like you've got hiccups, you know, in something that it's a real risk of sounding like a frog, just hopping along a note at a time, ribbit, 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 with no frogs in there. So there are several tricks to that, and one is, I think, not to use too much bow, particularly on the little notes. One is to not try and join stuff that is several strings apart, but to let the instrument do the joining for you through its own resonance. And the other is to look for opportunities for things that can actually properly be joined. So you don't have a kind of standard but that some of them, like here, you can really play through, and some of them that are just functional cadences at the end of a phrase just don't make too much. And then in this kind of stuff, make sure you allow yourself plenty of time to spell out. Here's a bottom part. Make sure we get to hear that at the same time as here's the bass. Oh, and here's a melody. So just spend a bit of time working out which notes are worth investing more sound into and which are the ones you can just sit back on and let them happen a bit. Shall we play it through from the top? And then I'll see about putting your bass line in. Here we go. 3 and 4 and... It's really beautiful, isn't it? Even just on its own. It's even more beautiful once you've got the bass part doing a little bit of steering of the harmony in the middle. So hold on a second and I'll find my bass. We start together, so I will count you in, and the bass part has basically moving quavers throughout the vast majority of the piece, so that should really help to keep us together. It should help to keep a sense of pulse, but hopefully not hurry you too much either. 3 and 4